All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're still covering transfer portal moves. We've got the SEC. We're covering the Georgia Bulldogs. If you are liking our content, make sure to like and subscribe. But we'll get things started. Marcus, we'll start with you. What was your favorite transfer Georgia got this offseason?
Mine might be a little bit biased just because I watched a lot of BYU last year. But Kanon Catchings, I think, is a very interesting piece that they got. Like, he was a freshman last year at BYU, averaged 7 points a game in pretty limited time. It was pretty scarce throughout the season. He averaged 17 minutes a game, but some games he would barely play at all. Some games he'd play a bunch, and he really has the ability to heat up pretty quickly. I forget what game it was that I was watching when he hit 4 or 5 threes. I think it was maybe against Baylor. He was perfect from the field from three. But I really like his upside on the offensive end. He has the ability to get hot, as I said. 89th percentile catch and shoot. Struggles off the dribble. Not really much of a creator for others, at least not yet. But I do think he potentially has the upside to grow into more of an offensive creator. But I also like him on the defensive end a little bit. He's a longer, lanky guy. Last year, 3.1% block rate, 2% steal rate. I think he has the ability to be disruptive with the frame that he has on the defensive end. So I do like his ability to come in and create. He's going to get opportunity playing for this Georgia team who I'm not really sure how good they're going to be. And so I think he's going to have the ability to create and have a little bit more of a green light than he had at BYU, because obviously they were a really good team with a bunch of good players.
Cody, do you agree? Is it Catchings for you, or are you going a different direction?
I think I would go in a different direction. I understand where Marcus is coming from with mostly the shot making upside with Catchings. Plus, you mentioned the defense a little bit, how there are some playmaking traits in there. 3.1% block rate, 2% steal rate, just his length and athleticism combination will allow him. He makes highlight plays look rather easy. But I just think the around the rim offense is a little bit raw, and I just don't really see him as a primary creator. I think he's more of a spot up and movement shooter within this offense. He may need to be on the ball a little bit more often than I would like, but for the guy that I think is going to be the number one option on this offense, I think it's Jeremiah Wilkinson, the sophomore coming from Cal. I just think he has a special type of burst and downhill driving ability, especially for a 6'1" guard. He's built rather big, and he's got a hyper quick first step, super bouncy athlete that can score at the rim. And I'm not really worried about his 6'1" frame translating to the SEC. He was a 63rd percentile rim scorer on 3.8 rim attempts per game, which is a 93rd percentile volume. Plus, he gets to the free throw line at a pretty high rate for a guard, 35.6%, which is really solid. I think all of those traits are going to translate very well. I do think there's some shot making upside with him, but I do think that's where the concern will come in. I'm not his shot form and release is a little bit awkward, and I think he's going to need to clean up some of that stuff if he wants to shoot higher than 32% from three. He was very rim and three reliant, mostly at the rim, but he did flash some perimeter shot making qualities. And like I said, I just think his advantage creation off the bounce in transition and in pick and roll as well, and just his downhill driving ability is going to be something that translates and better than I think any other skill that any other player on this team or any other perimeter option can have on this team as a primary creator. So yeah, I'm fairly high on Wilkinson, not really so much on the rest of the group. This is more by default. I didn't really like what Mike White did in the portal all that much. So yeah, I'll go with Wilkinson as my guy here.
Can we talk a little bit more about the other transfers? Any others that stand out to you guys? Marcus, we'll go with you.
Like Cody said, it's not a great class. Jordan Ross, I'll let Cody speak to him a little bit more because I know he's probably had pages of notes queued up for this one. But not a great shooter, really like a very inefficient scorer in the West Coast Conference. And now he's going to come over to the SEC, and we're expecting like efficient scoring. He wasn't good at the rim. He was not good from three on low volume. And now he's going to have to come over here and like be on the ball and create and score in the SEC. Like, I just don't really see that for him. And then what is it? Smurf Millender coming over from UTSA. Very, very small guard. I think he's sub 6 feet. He can really shoot it, right? He's 100th percentile in catch and shoot. So like he's going to obviously add to some floor spacing there. I worry about him on the defensive end. And I don't really know if he's got like a great burst. I saw like flashes of it, but I don't really know how well that's going to translate. And he's not super efficient at the rim anyway, so I don't really know how much that matters. But he did shoot almost 44% from three last year, and like I said, he's got deep range. He made a bunch beyond 25 feet. So, like of those two guys, I definitely prefer Millender. But Cody, I'll let you speak to Ross a little bit more.
Yeah, Cody, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I also prefer Millender compared to Ross overall. I'm just worried about Ross's outlook, and it hurts for me to say that because I'm always pretty high on St. Mary's as a group, and I always love those guards. I love that guard group. I love Randy Bennett and what he does, but when guys transfer out of his program, especially at the guard position, it hasn't really worked out all that well. He just gives me shades of Aiden Mahaney when he went to UConn last year, and it just kind of feels like something it could just be a potential fallout here, and he might end up after this year heading back to the mid-major ranks where I think he kind of belongs from like an athleticism standpoint. That's where I have the most issues, and that's where I had a lot of issues with Mahaney is like you could kind of see it in the WCC. Like there were some athletes in that league that gave him a really tough time. Kind of the same thing with Ross. And he's an interior dominant scorer, but he also struggled to provide efficiency in this area. He was 41% overall from inside the arc, which is it's just not that great for a guy that doesn't shoot it all that well. 33rd percentile rim scorer, 40th percentile paint scorer, and 30% free throw attempt rate is fine. But when he's not able to provide all that much efficiency, when he was 24 for 80 from three last season, and his future, like, or his projection, like shooting number wise, doesn't look all that great because he's a 63% free throw shooter for his career. So it just doesn't seem like there's all that much shooting upside in there, like slowish release that he kind of needs some time and space to get off. So there were too many issues that popped up when I watched the tape for him to really translate. He's a projected starter on this roster, which I don't really see panning out. I think it has to turn into a guy like Marcus Millender or even Jeremiah Wilkinson playing the point. I know he's a little bit more of a scoring minded too, and he can do that because he's 6'1", but a super wide frame. I think he's fine at the two positions. So I think the backcourt's going to look more like Smurf Millender and Jeremiah Wilkinson with Ross kind of taking a back seat, kind of being that second ball handler when he comes in for his spot minutes, like maybe 15 to 20. But overall, I just don't really think his game's going to translate all that well, especially in the most athletic league in America.
What do you guys expect from this Georgia Bulldog team? Like, do these guys fit well in the system, or what are we thinking? Marcus, we'll go with you.
I don't really have that high of expectations for them. I mean, like right now, Torvik has them as the 12th best team in the SEC. Personally, I have them a little bit lower. I just don't really love the group. Like the guard play, I think there's just like Cody said, bringing in Ross, Millender undersized, and then you have like Blue Cane back, you have Wilkinson. It just feels like a bunch of guys that are decent. Some maybe below average in the SEC, and so I have not that high of expectations for them. I don't view them as the 12th best team in the SEC. I don't really expect them to be like a tournament team, to be honest. I don't really like the roster that much.
Cody, let's hear it from you, and we'll do final thoughts as well. wrapped in there.
Yeah, I understand what Mike White's trying to do from an offensive perspective, but these guards don't really fit the mold as Mike White two-way physical guards was outside of Wilkinson. Just Ross is a little bit thinner. He's 6'3", but I think he plays a little bit smaller than that. He's like 175-pound frame, gets knocked off his spots easily, is not really a great defender. And you add in Smurf Millender, who's 5'11", just a little bit too small to be considered a two-way guard. But or like a rim reliant guard. There's like Mike White guards like to play in transition, like to get to the rim often, and like to get to the free throw line. There's just not a ton of guys in this lineup that I'm all that high on. Besides, like a piece that's interesting to me is Justin Bailey coming from Wofford. I think he can be a really good connector piece for this team. I think he has 3-and-D qualities. I mean, shot at near 45% from three last season at Wofford. The 2 years prior weren't great. Maybe it was 32.5% and 34.8% in those last 2 years, respectively. And I'm not like overly impressed by Bailey as a shooting talent, but I think as a stationary three-point shooter, he's going to be able to provide some value when he has a little bit of space. Not the quickest release, but I do think when guys like Wilkinson and Millender are able to create advantages, I think Bailey's going to be able to capitalize for them. And then on the defensive end, I think he's going to be able to carve out a role for himself if these other guards don't really pan out all that well. I mean, like the numbers don't pop off the page, but he played for some pretty poor defenses throughout his career, and he kind of stood out as the main defender who would lock down the opposing best perimeter options. So he's got some length at 6'3", some size. So I think he actually fits the mold the best as a Mike White guard. He's just obviously not the most talented on the ball or really as a shooter. But just to wrap up, like my expectations, I guess, on this team. I mean, I was pretty high on this team last year. I thought they were potentially a tournament team going into last season. I know that wasn't really a popular opinion, but the guys up front, I just thought were a little bit too good. Like, obviously, you're losing Asa Newell, who was a first rounder. Guys like RJ Godfrey, Silas Demery was really good. I think he's pretty underrated now at UConn. I think he's gonna flourish there. And they did keep a few front court pieces like Samto Surreal and Dylan James, who fit the mold as like physical rim protectors, can get on the offensive glass for a Mike White team. But just the rest of this roster, I'm not all that high on the talent, not all that high on the fit. So I do see this team as near the bottom of the SEC, and in my opinion, definitely not a tournament team right now.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.